On May 27, 1967, 90% of Australian voters recorded the largest ever yes vote in a referendum to alter the Australian Constitution. This referendum meant that the Commonwealth Government could make laws for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and allowed them to be counted in the official population. For many, it was a unifying moment of political and social recognition. 50 years later, this deeply symbolic victory remains a key moment in the long and ongoing fight for equality.
Through diverse voices and stories, Right Wrongs reframes our understanding of this event in both a Western Australian and regional context, and considers the influence it has on who we are and where we are going.
1967, I was living out in the bush, and I guess the referendum at that time, to me, didn't mean anything. It didn't mean any changes to my lifestyle and the way that we were living partly off the land, and our family just doing clearing the land for white people.
My recollections were not about the referendum, because I was only 20 at that point in time, and so it didn't hold any particular significance for me there and then. But it certainly does now that, over a period of time, you get to realise the importance of that particular occasion. Well, it enabled Aboriginal people to be considered to be citizens of this country and counted, and also being accountable to the government. So programs designed for Aboriginal people counted in the census, so we could enjoy life like everyone else with the same sort of rights and privileges too. That's what it meant, and that's what it still does to a certain extent.
The day that was announced, I remember all the Aboriginal people, quite the ones who were drinkers or consumed alcohol, were allowed for the first time in the Nangarup front bar. Prior to that, they only had a little side door where they used to purchase their alcohol. They weren't allowed at any time to go and sit down and drink with other customers or patrons.
I was a very young man at that particular time, involved with politics and business and so on and so forth, but nothing of any great consequence. I was aware a referendum was on. I never looked at it, never followed it, but I did think at the time, what are we holding a referendum for? And my information I had got in on it was the fact that we were looking for bringing the white Australians and the black Australians together. I didn't think there was ever any need for that. Firstly, we're all human beings, and as human beings we're associated together, and apart from looking at it through the referendum, we went to school together, we worked together when the opportunities arose, we went socially together with different groups that I know here, and I just couldn't believe there was the need for a referendum to bring about something that was naturally happening.
I think it was the start of something really positive, because it gave us a voice. I think it opened doors of opportunity for employment, or further education, and just being acknowledged that, we exist in this country of Australia.
I guess in my memory it's all about the changes, or some of the changes that had come around through the referendum, and things like Aboriginal people having the right to be counted and to become citizens and able to vote and to get some recognition within the community. But it didn't change my lifestyle, because I was happy the way I was. The biggest change in my eyes was education, because before that we weren't allowed to go to to state schools. So we only had our schooling in the mission, and then when we left the missions, we came out onto farming properties, and then we had to go into the school system, into the state schools. We went to school in Tamballup, and I'll tell you what, it was a pretty daunting task to get there, you know, but my dad had the insight into knowing that the most important thing for us as children in our lives was education, and so we went there.
Probably, if anything, people talk more about the Aboriginals and the whites, and as far as I was concerned, we're all Australians.
If I think back to the time, I mean, in early 1980s, they still had the Native Reserve going, and I was actually employed with now known as DCP, and myself and my brother, who was also employed there, we helped to work with the remaining families to make the transition from reserve life into the townhouses, and that was only in 1980, which isn't too long ago. And you know, you've seen improvement in employment, I guess. We've had teachers' aid. A lot of students that have gone through the local school there have become very prominent in their work positions. You know, a lot of them went on to be managers, teachers, and so a lot of good have come out. I think that's because we had the opportunity to further our education, to gain better employment.
I don't know that it's changed a lot at all. Our country still struggles with quite a few things, particularly related to a very small population, 850,000 Aboriginal people in this country. There has been some gains there, but it's mainly of some well-being people, of well-being or well-meaning people, I should say, and Aboriginal people joining forces there. But we are still carrying quite a bit of the baggage of the past, and I think the recent issues with our Anzac Day celebration down here and many other cases have been tantamount to that. Just showing the difference between that era and now, and the things that applied to one particular race in this country which didn't apply to others. So it was a comparative reference point, and still is. But it's purely that, it's a talking point now. I enjoy the same rights as everyone else, but up until 20, who else in that country? I suppose 21 was the age in those days when you actually formally became an adult, so it probably was still a juvenile or junior, whatever the case might be. So I was still in the era of probably kids being seen and not heard a lot. But I was working, and so my parents were too. So we were heavily contributed. I was heavily committed towards helping my family.
Well, personally, I feel that it's the doors of opportunity to share our culture, because I think it's all about who we are, is why we're having the reconciliation, and to, you know, make people aware of who we are and what our, you know, where we've come from, because we never had you know, the opportunity to do a lot of things. 1967 is only 50 years ago, and I think, you know, it's very encouraging to see, you know, how Aboriginal people having the opportunity to, you know, become prominent people in our communities, in politics. We've got people from every kind of employment, you know, doctors, nurses, teachers, police officers, and you've got people just in managerial positions in local Aboriginal organisations. So, you know, over the years, I think, you know, there's been an opportunity for our people to really excel and to make a difference to our own people.
Well, all I can say is that as far as I'm concerned, I've never had any need to reconcile with anyone. That if I've got an Aboriginal friend, I'll go and talk with them. If I want them to do something for me, I'll go and ask them, and I hope they'll do the same with me. I don't think reconciliation is gaining anything but words, and maybe a pat on the back if something comes in that the general public think is good for the government of the day, full stop.
It's a difficult one for me. Reconciliation can only be formed on the truth. And this country has never, right up until now, looked at the truth of this country, as I said at the beginning of the conversation. You can't have reconciliation. Reconciliation is the bringing together of two individuals or a number of individuals to resolve an issue. And we have lots of issues that have not been resolved. So how can you have a reconciliation if one party is not going to admit or party to the truth of what happened in this country and how people were treated and some of the consequences of that? Maybe even talking compensation, who knows? But you cannot have, if a married couple were to reconcile the differences, it means that they have to be truthful about everything that's involved in reconciliation, and I don't believe we are.
The past was pretty rough. You know, we just, like our people, just became yes, boss. How many times in my life have I heard that being spoken, those words being spoken by our Noongar people, yes, boss. And so they found change a lot harder because they were so submissive, but they were beautiful people. They were beautiful, gentle, kind people. And so when we came into the system where we had to be with white children and that, we hit. But when we came to the school, we went to school in Tambalub, and I was lucky because my brothers were good sportsmen, good scholars, and we were pretty bright kids. So we had acceptance there, but you were accepted as part of the school community, but when you came out of school, the kids weren't allowed to talk to you. They weren't allowed to associate with you. So they learned their respect through seeing your actions in the school, but you didn't get the same sort of thing after, because I guess everybody, the white people, were still living under the same law where Aboriginal people didn't mean anything. They didn't have any rights to be able to say anything, except yes, boss.
Land is something that is very dear to everybody in this country, if not throughout the world. And our country, with 850,000 people in it, have been denied those opportunities. And we have native title, which is purely just that. It's a title. It's like being called Mr. or Mrs. That's all it is. John Howard sort of that. They weren't going to be making any definitive legislation that allowed Aboriginal people to say, well, the land that's York Street was Aboriginal tribal land and we would like the name changed or something along those lines. So an inclusive, that's what reconciliation is, inclusive and it's truth, based on the truth. And if you can't talk about that, reconciliation is not on the table. It's someone's domination over another.
The biggest thing in my life, the biggest thing that I believe in is education. If our children get educated, no, we don't want Rhodes Scholars or anything like that, but we want our children to be able to sit down and talk to you like I'm talking to you, to be able to look you in the eye, to be able to stress a point, to be able to say, this is who I am, this is how I'm a proud Aboriginal person, and I want that to be really stressed in anything that I say, because that's my biggest belief, is that we're going to make it, and we're going to make it in a big way through education.